Hello everyone and welcome back to another Movie Nights live spoiler discussion of Daredevil Born Again. Today we are talking about episode 7, which just ended about half an hour ago-ish. Sorry, I'm a little bit late starting. We just had to kind of get everything going and ready there. I'm really excited to talk about the episode. I thought it was a really great episode. I thought there was a lot to love about it. But something I want to point out before I continue, though, is if you want to participate in the live chat, just go ahead and put in a question. I'll pop you up on the screen like this, and we'll discuss Daredevil as long as we would like. However, not that long because I am tired and I have work tomorrow, so we'll do as much as we can. But yeah, let's talk about this episode. So a lot of things to go over, and like I said, full spoilers. I'm going to be jumping all over the place. Usually I try to do it like chronologically with the episode, but I'm going to be jumping, like I said, all over the place because my brain is scatterbrained. So let's talk about the big thing. Let's talk about the big thing first. And that is, Muse is dead. They killed Muse big time. And I think that if you go back and watch, because I've seen the full season, if you go back and watch the full season review, which you can find on the channel, I'm trying so hard not to spoil that, like, they don't use Muse very long and that he's killed pretty quickly. And I say in that review, I think there are going to be some people who are upset about how they utilize certain characters in a way. Like, I was really trying to be vague about it, but what I was trying to say is, like, they kill Muse, and there's going to be a lot of people who are just not happy about that at all. And I get it, like, especially if you're a big fan of the character, I completely understand. But I think, personally, how they used Muse's story in the story that they're telling with Daredevil Born Again, how he fits into the story, I think he fit perfectly and that story was told. I think they did it, and they did it really well, you know? And I also think that the actor playing him did a really great job. Who I'm going to look at his name here. It was Hunter Dewan. He did a really great job playing the character, and I think the character was utilized perfectly for what it was supposed to be, just to be completely honest. And I think that, any more use of him through the story they're telling would have felt forced, would have felt like too much. They teased his presence in the early episodes. He was heavily prevalent in these last 2 episodes. And I think, it was still cool that we got him. Could we have gotten more of him? Sure. Maybe. But, guys, I've seen episodes 8 and 9. And the story that they go down with 8 and 9, you do not want to miss. It's so good. Next week's episodes are so good, but we're here to talk about this week's episode, so let's dive into it a little bit more. Another thing that I like about the episode is it kind of toys with the audience about the relationship between Vanessa and Wilson, and it kind of makes you believe that maybe Vanessa wants the power back and she wants to take over the throne, and it makes you seem like she has hired Luca to kill Wilson. Until, of course, Luca shows up and Buck shoots him, and I love the way Wilson just goes, "Thank you, Buck." Thought that was great. And horrible impression, by the way, sorry. And then he says, "Can you call Vanessa and ask her if she wants me to bring her home, anything?" And to me, and, I'm not even bringing in anything in the fact that I know about next week's episodes, but to me, that says that, they were in on it together to take out Luca, who's been just a giant pain in the ass this whole time. And you'll see kind of how that plays out in the episodes coming next week. Now, even if Vanessa did kind of want Wilson to secretly die, which they kind of play with, where their relationship is at, where it's building, is really interesting. It's a great story they've been doing this season. And, with Heather Glenn kind of out of the equation for a while as their therapist, they're going to have to really start relying on each other more specifically, which is very interesting as we move forward. Something else I want to talk about is the amazing crash out sequence that Wilson had when he found out that Daredevil was back. He basically just rants to Buck about how he always gets in his shit and he pisses him off, and he just goes on this rant. You can just tell how furious he is. But I also just loved how when he first does it, like, publicly, he just says, like, he's back. And then later when he's to himself, he says it again, and you can just tell, like, it kind of goes back to the first episode where you can almost see Wilson telling himself, like, he fucking promised he was done. Of course, he could say the same thing about himself. I love the duality of seeing both the Kingpin and Daredevil both be reborn at the same time. It's been very interesting. And, it's going to be interesting how it plays out next week. God, you guys aren't ready for the next 2 episodes. But anyway, going back to this one, you also see the relationship with Matt and Heather start to break down a little bit in that They kind of get into an argument in the beginning of the episode where she is kind of telling him about how he's suppressing trauma and how it's not healthy, and how, she catches him in a lie where he obviously doesn't say that he's Daredevil, but he says, like, oh, I was working on a case last night. She's like, your briefcase was left here. And he's like, oh, I couldn't think, and I went out for a walk, and I fell. And I love that he kind of is gaslighting her a little bit, because he's kind of like, it's part of my reality is I'm going to bump into things. And she's like, why don't you tell me? And he's like, because it's embarrassing. But because the truth is just way worse than that. And Heather's obviously not a stupid person. I don't think she's quite put together that he's Daredevil, but she definitely has her suspicions that something is going on with him. I love the sequence when he's in the shower after redonning the suit. He almost felt like I wouldn't say like an addict relapsing. That was more like the second episode in that fight scene. It just felt more like someone who, him being Daredevil almost felt like a burden off of his shoulders more than a burden on, because he was finally able to be his true self. And obviously he rides that high to, have some fun with Heather in the shower. And that eventually actually leads into their first fight. Or at least first fight that we see, where they really emphasize, they really want you to know that he's stroking her face and knows the lines of her face. This is the one thing about the episode that I thought didn't quite work for me, which I'll get to in a second, and that is when Daredevil goes to investigate Muse in broad daylight, by the way, and kind of sneaks in when the cops aren't there, and he's feeling the artwork with his bare hands, which, I get, but at the same time, like, it's a crime scene. And Muse is such a good artist that he got the details of her face so accurately that Matt knew that it was her. I get it. Like, I get that they're trying to emphasize, like, this is how good of an artist, this is how committed Muse is. But at the same time, I think there was a better way of, Matt finding out that Heather was in trouble from Muse. I do think there was a better way on that, in that regard. Going on, I thought that the fight sequence with Muse was decent. It obviously wasn't as good as last week's, the amazing Phil Severa masterpiece that was. But, we have to talk about this. We have to talk about this. Daredevil shooting his fucking baton through Muse's shoulder and then pulling him back. Whoo! Stone cold shit. That was awesome, especially when, like, he pulls him through and you can see, like, the canvas of his suit just started getting tainted with more and more blood from the shoulder wound. Amazing. When Heather shoots and kills Muse, like, the shot of him on the canvas I thought was really great. I also like that this was clearly Muse's master plan, was to eventually get to Heather Glenn and do a murder-suicide like some of the cops were saying. And obviously his plans had to be escalated because of Daredevil's involvement. And, he was really disturbing in that sequence with Heather Glenn. I thought that it was really chilling when he says, I know what you're thinking right now. Can I make it to the door in time? I was like, ooh, didn't enjoy that shit at all. But, the actor did a really great job. I also, something else I liked is the episode gives you a little bit of insight into some time after the Netflix series ended and before this series started, where Matt has a decent argument with Cherry, where they're going back and forth about what's the right thing to do about Muse. And Daredevil at one point says to him, or Matt says to him, there was a situation where when something like this would come up, you would call me, to kind of establish that, Cherry and Daredevil had a relationship before he even knew it was Matt, because we see that he finds out it's Matt in the pilot episode of the Born Again. So I thought that was a nice little fun feedback thing going on there. I still wish the show, and I know that they had to go through a creative overhaul and they had shot a lot of episodes already. I would love to know what happened to Brett Mahoney and some of the other people. Like, where's Claire? Like, these characters from the Netflix show, I would love to see again. I would love to see them get a mention. Maybe we get at least a mention of them in season 2, because it's all from this new showrunner, all new stuff. They're not hindered by anything. Maybe that would be interesting to see, which, we'll have to wait for. But I do like the Cherry character a lot, though. I think they do add, oh my gosh, the detective who, the woman detective played by Rubio Kian, Angie Kim. Also really like that character as well. I think she's a good detective. I love that she's kind of stuck in between the two worlds of Daredevil and Fisk, and she clearly had a working relationship with Cherry when he was on the force. And also, Hamish Allen Headley playing Officer Powell, that piece of shit, Officer Powell. Like, you hate the character, you hate the guy, but man, he's playing him so well, and the character's so well written. He's such just a fucking asshole that he's supposed to be. And, the amazing Nicholas Aricchio is joining the chat, where he mentions that Angie Kim was great in the Bank Heist episode. Yes, she was. She was excellent in that episode. And I think she did a good job here, too, when she's kind of explaining to Wilson as they're breaking down the suspects of who could it be, who's left. And she's like, this is the only person that we haven't spoken to, and they look in his history. Nicholas also adds that Cherry is my favorite newcomer, but he'll never be Nadim. Let's make something clear here. No one will ever be the amazing Agent Ray Nadim. Ray Nadim is the shit. We love Ray Nadim. The best. Man, I almost spoiled something coming up, but, forget that I pondered for a second. Yeah, something else that the episode does quite well is we do see the task force being put to use to try to go take out Muse, and clearly they're taking credit for Muse's capture, which of course that's such a fucking Wilson Fisk thing to do, and you'll see how the task force plays into the episodes next week. It's a very very interesting thing that again I'm trying to be vague on and not spoil. What else can I talk about from the episode tonight? I think that having the intercutting between Muse and Heather Glenn and the cops and Fisk, and then sprinkling in Matt in the cave as well, I thought that the pacing of that was exceptional. Like, there's like a 30-minute chunk of this 45-minute episode that flies by because of how good the pacing is. And I think they sprinkled the stuff with Luca in there perfectly as well. I think they did a really good job of trying to keep all the storylines going, and you're kind of starting to see the storylines kind of come together and taper off where they need to. You know, like the end of the White Tiger story into the Muse story, and the story of the first episode, how that's going to be coming back with Vanessa and Fisk and everybody. It's all coming together nicely. And man, it does. I keep saying it. I'm beating a dead horse at this point, and I'm sorry, but guys, 8 and 9 are so good, especially 9. 9 is amazing. But yeah, in terms of dislikes, the only thing I didn't like about the episode is the episode tonight, episode 7, is, I didn't love him touching the paintings and figuring out that it's her. Like, I get the idea of it, and like, I don't fully hate it, but I don't know. I feel like there was just a better way to do it, and just with everything that was happening. I wonder how much they were hindered by the previously shot footage as well. Let's talk about the sets, too, because we also have seen the Muse hideout in previous episodes, predominantly in the last episode. But I think that set is really wonderful. It looks really great. It's wonderfully built, very creepy, very eerie with the bodies and the artwork. And, even though Muse is dead, I definitely think you'll feel his presence for a long time. Like, he killed 60 fucking people, for the love of God, and he has artwork all over the city. So I would not be shocked if you feel his presence. Now, I know that there are some people who've been to the Daredevil Born Again Season 2 set who said that there was a trailer with the name like Stunt Muse on it, hinting that Muse is coming back for Season 2. I wouldn't take that as confirmation, personally. It could be just a distraction. It could just be that they're filming a flashback. Maybe Heather Glenn is having flashbacks of Muse because it's traumatic for her. I could see that happening. And look, if the character's actually alive somehow and they bring it back, it's the Marvel Universe. It's where no one's really fucking dead. I wouldn't be the most shocked, but at the same time, I would not, put your eggs in the basket that he is alive. Let's see, we have another comment from Nick here. Was disappointed by the abrupt end of Muse. While it played well and the story played out, he was a great character. He was a great character, but, I do think that his story played out, like you said. Like, I think there was all that they could do with him, they did. For this particular story that they were telling. I think that had they saved Muse for a story that wasn't Born Again, that wasn't affected by a creative overhaul, that wasn't done with all that, then maybe the storyline could have felt a little bit better. Or not better, but the storyline could have been longer with him. But I think what we got was great. And when you think about the great things about this season, you're going to think about Muse. So, I wouldn't be too, disrupted or disappointed by it. Nick also adds, wonder if that's how he met his end in the original script, or the cutoff was reshoots. Maybe. I don't know. I do not know. I know that most of episode 7 was from the original show. I just don't know if that death scene was a reshoot or not. We know that the fight scene last week was a reshoot, so they weren't against reshooting stuff with Muse, so we'll have to see how that plays out. I'm sure once the season's over, we'll get the full fucking rundown in one of the trades of like all the differences and everything, which will be fun to see. But yeah, things are ramping up, and I'm trying to think of other things I can talk about with this episode. Anything I'm missing, I'm forgetting. Buck is starting to grow on me a lot at this point in the show. And listen, Nick brought up earlier, no one can place Nadim. Nobody can replace James Wesley, first of all. James Wesley was an amazing character, and I think that Buck basically being the new Wesley is interesting. I do think Fisk needs that dynamic with somebody, but up to this point, Buck just felt like second-rate Wesley, but they had a great sequence in this episode where he talked about, and he says, Buck, why did I hire you? And he says, like, you said, I think asymmetrically. Like, that was a really great conversation. And even Buck telling him, like, hey, if Daredevil goes after Muse, it's not the biggest problem. We can get Muse taken out, and, which leads to Wilson's whole thing against that. But, the scene at the end when Luca goes to kill Kingpin and Buck just takes him out, and again, he just goes, thank you, Buck. I loved that. And, that character's growing on me. The Michael Gandolfini character with B.B. Urich. What's the character's name? I have it here. It's going to bother me. Daniel Blake. That's right. That character has been interesting to say the least, kind of like the obsessive youth over the mob politician, which, you see all the time in the real world and just in movies and TV. But I like the scene with him and B.B. Urich, where he basically says, like, hey, you kind of fucked me over with that story. And she's like, you gave it up, And there's that mutual respect. And I like when he told her, you're not a dumb person, because she clearly knows that Daredevil stopped them and not the task force. And he's like, look, you're not a dumb person, but you got to be careful. He's basically telling her, like, look, I'm your friend. I don't want to have to get in the way and hurt you, but you got to fucking be careful. And, I think he's kind of getting a little bit ahead of himself. He does think very highly of himself. When he was sitting in Fisk's chair and she's like, how do you think he's going to feel about that? And he very confidently says, like, oh, he's been loving me lately. I'm like, Jesus, dude, you got to be careful, man. You got to be careful. Fisk does love loyalty, but he doesn't love damassery. So you got to watch out for that. Nick followed up in the chat. How true is this? Karen Page with a gun tops all. Absolutely. Karen Page with a gun, unstoppable. No stopping Karen Page with a gun. Oh, Jesus. But yeah, I also want to bring up Kirsten McDuffie, Nikki James. She had one great scene in this episode, and I mentioned in the review of the full season that she felt like one of the characters that kind of got shafted by the retooling and a bit underutilized, but overall, I think she does a fantastic job, and I loved her scene in this episode where she talks to Cherry after Matt and Cherry have an argument. She then has an argument with Cherry, and Cherry, I like the interaction because Cherry basically tells her, look, the same confidence with Matt is the confidence I have with you. And she says, well, that's not good enough for me because we're supposed to be a team. I don't want these fucking secrets going around. Of course, she obviously doesn't know that Matt is Daredevil, and Cherry does. So that complicates things a little bit in that way. Let's see. Nick also says, Karen Page with a gun, I need you to distract Doom. Yes, let's make that Ant-Man meme go viral. Excuse me. Let's see. Gotta drop great steam. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means, Nicholas, but I'll agree with you. Sure. Let's see here. Cole North is one of the members of the task force. That character is a little bit different in the comic books, but they share some similarities. And you're kind of seeing him work with Officer Powell, both kind of being pieces of shit cops. And Angela Dotoro, Camila Rodriguez just keeps killing it as this character. And, she obviously did a great job explaining to Matt that, like, Daredevil saved her and trying to explain, what she was telling the cops and everything. And it was cool to see her kind of... she obviously hasn't put it together, but I like to think that she will, and maybe she will. We'll see. But it's one of those things where, it goes back to the end of episode 6 where she just like says Daredevil, and he says, I'm here. And it's kind of like him talking to the audience, like, I'm back, baby. Don't worry about it. But yeah, lots of crazy stuff happening. Muse gets killed. Luca gets killed. All of the distractions are kind of slowly fading away, and we're getting into that main finale story of what it's going to be. You guys aren't ready. I'm just telling you, you guys are not fucking ready. You're going to love it. You're going to love it. But guys, I think that'll do it for tonight's live spoiler discussion. I can't wait to talk about next week. Oh, God, especially the week after. Episodes 8 and 9 are so good. But next week, I can't wait to talk about episode 8 with you guys. And again, if you're watching after the live is over, please put your thoughts and comments down below about the episode. I'd love to see what you guys think. And I would also love to see you next week on episode 8 in the live chat, interacting, talking about the show. I love doing this, and it's always a lot of fun. So, guys, once again, thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you next week for Daredevil episode 8.